Hello! Umi of Umi no Wumi from 2025 here. This pre-campaign information was initially recorded back in 2024, but I'm here redoing it as well as a few other recaps in order to make them match up with the quality of the current ones. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. Welcome to Detorquere Forta, or as we like to call it around here, DFW. The W doesn't stand for anything, by the way, it's just there. This is the least D&D-like D&D campaign you are ever going to find on the damn planet, and I think that is already shown by the fact that I do recaps instead of just sharing the campaign itself as a regular podcast. The reason why I do this is because our campaign is very, very story and roleplay based. It makes the campaign itself very incomprehensible to anyone except for ourselves. We take a lot of breaks, make a ton of inside jokes, and all in all, it's just a very weird time. We understand what's going on, but the average person might not. So the recaps are here in order to both help you and help the other players know what's going on. I myself am a player. I play the character called the Rover, but I understand the most of what's going on here. So I take it upon myself to deal with the recaps here, and I record them and post them here as soon as we do a session, which is not very frequent because of the way our schedules work. Now, all that said and done, this is a pre-campaign information video in order to explain all of the really basic information I think you need going in. I'll do my best not to leave any spoilers since I have some future knowledge here, but if I do give any sort of quote-unquote spoilers, it's because it's something that just basically can't come up in session or happens so early on that I don't really mind saying it right out the gate. Like any good campaign, we have a prophecy, one that is more or less the motivation for our characters. So, here's what it says. 5 people and their bijou, when together can ascend to godhood. A 4-leaf clover followed by death, a pineapple sliced into perfectly shaped cubes, a snowflake melted by adversity, a rotten orange buzzing with flies, and the sword that protects them all dark and bloodied. A bijou of green, yellow, blue, orange, and red collide with these 5, and alongside them will be all of those helped along the way, each with a wish of their own on display. So to sum it up, basically what the prophecy says is that there are 5 people who will ascend to godhood. Each person is tied to one of the objects mentioned in the prophecy, and the bijous are these sort of gemstones that have some sort of affiliation with all of these people. Now, just to get it out of the way, because I don't think there's literally any point in campaign when I could actually talk about this, it's time to bring up the hardest concept to wrap your head around in this entire campaign, and that is the intramurals. Intramurals are kind of like these weird little dreamlike spaces that act as some sort of reflection for a person's true self. So each person can get their own intramural. Sometimes they can be a little bit like AUs, where the intramural for a person is some other universe where the world kind of revolves around them, or the world is just some sort of metaphor for their real life. In addition to the intramurals are the Ageus. These are blue gems with a chain pattern on them, and they are what grant a person access to the intramurals. The process of accessing these intramurals can be sped up by eating the Agea. Don't question it. But they don't immediately give access to the intramurals. A character first has to engage in some sort of important event before the intramural can actually be accessed. So a character could maybe eat an Agea, but they might not get their intramural until something important happens to them. Now let's get into some much easier to understand stuff like the places. The continent in which everything takes place on is called Fenestra. Before the campaign, Fenestra previously had a ton of people that were living there before the year 0. At year 0, everyone and everything on the surface got wiped out in one fell swoop, and only those living beneath the surface were the ones who survived. In the current day, there's a war going on. Yay! There's a lot of shadowy soldiers that are attacking places, and who they're affiliated with is unknown right now. Although right now the suspects are on the kingdoms Atecort and Stolem. Next up is Birecotes, which is essentially our little starting town. It's very big on mining, and recently got a ton of attention for the discovery of colorin, a rock which has just like Coca-Cola inside. They're also responsible for publishing the Coat Chronicles, this world-renowned newspaper, which is basically just the newspaper. Right next to Birecotes is, or was Roubalara. It kind of got destroyed by the shadowy figures that were attacking. Next up on the list is Ettenheim. It's basically the most generic fantasy town you can think of. Or more so a fantasy kingdom, I guess. Ettenheim's name is consistently changing depending on who rules it, so right now it's called Ettenheim because it's ruled by a guy called Heimer, who will be brought up later in the future. Right after Ettenheim is Abscongura. It's a mountain kingdom, and at the very top is a mysterious figure called the Fiolineld, who apparently no one has really seen. The Fiolineld rules over Abscongura and is sort of treated like a god. After that is Pacha, which isn't really a place where people live. It's a beach resort. It's literally a beach resort. Next on the list is Urquiti. It's another mountain kingdom, but this one's snowy. This one is ruled by a council instead, with a weird deity called Serpadzorgal being the most notable figure on this council. Urquiti also rules over the next 3 places that I'll be talking about: Clarux, Mikuna, and Caligoir. Clarux is sort of like fantasy Hollywood and New York in a way. It's the most modern and advanced place in the entirety of Fenestra, essentially. This also kind of makes it the most rambunctious, with a lot of drugs and just general city behavior going on around here. Neighboring it is Mikuna. It is the food town, and also just like a sort of offshoot of Clarux. Also, it's called Mikuna because it has Hatsune Miku as like the mayor, I think. Next to Mikuna and Clarux is Caligoir. It's a big old steampunk city, which is, again, kind of an offshoot of Clarux, but unlike Mikuna, isn't literally in Clarux. It's the newest city among all of these, and is still in the process of developing. After Caligoir is Mocuriste. These are just swamplands, which now house the few surviving Roubalara citizens after it got destroyed. The Caligoirians are trying to help out, but that's not really working because Urquiti, Atecort, and Pacha don't really recognize Mocuriste as a place. They view it as nothing. Next up is Stolem. It is this floating medieval French kind of kingdom. It was founded 600 years ago, but got taken over by the new ruler Herx about 2 years ago. Herx is a king, but really the whole place functions more so as a dictatorship. Around the same area as Stolem is Nalaka, which we don't get to know anything about because it's been completely shut down by Atecort within recent years, and so we don't know what's going on there. Speaking of Atecort, that is the last place I have to bring up here. It is the saddest, dreariest, gothic kingdom on the planet. The previous leader there sucked, and so now that king has been replaced by Frederick, who is a 12-year-old boy. But who gives a shit about any of these places and whatever? I don't. I care about the characters. Let's talk about our PCs. I'll be going in order of who has the least and most to talk about here. So yeah. So that means we'll be starting off with Azrael. He's a half-orc artificer, and a cowboy bounty hunter that doesn't kill people. I don't know how that works. I don't think it does work. All of the player characters have a pet of some sort, and Azrael's is a horse named Puppy. Azrael supposedly grew up in Caligoir. His family and his girlfriend sort of just vanished after some sort of accident that occurred. And ever since, Azrael has sort of just been wandering about, doing these quote-unquote bounty hunter jobs. Next up is Novis, previously a human but now a homebrew race called Abducted, and also a warlock. His pet is Fidus, a wolf dog. Him and his 2 siblings were from Urquiti and were attacked by Serpadzorgal. One of these siblings died, and Novis was cursed and given powers, which is what made him an Abducted. He's then able to alter his appearance basically at will, but some people can see through the facade if they have a high enough perception. He was kicked out of his home and took Fizz with him, and has been traveling the world ever since as a poor, homeless little freak. Now, don't get too attached to Novis, because he will be very quickly replaced by his younger sister, Beat, who is only 13. All of the player characters are meant to be adults, but Beat is a child. And also a druid. After Beat is Lyrivir, an Aasimar paladin. His pet is also a horse named Desire, who is heavily implied to be a wild-shaped druid that's just stuck like that. He's a knight from Stolem. He grew up as a noble and was despised by his parents for being an Aasimar and not just like a regular human guy. He had some very heavy involvement in the revolution that put Herx into power and essentially became Herx's right-hand toxic yaoi man. Herx ends up sending Lyrivir off to go recruit some more people to join Stolem for some reason. So that's why Lyrivir is out here, because normally Stolemites don't really leave, but Lyrivir did. And now he's going on great adventures and really good things are happening to him. Last but not least is the character that I play, the Rover. He has a real name, but no one has heard that or seen his face because he's weird. He's a tabaxi, and his class is Rogue/Bard. He's multiclassing, because he's special. Rover was born and raised in Clarux, according to himself, so that may or may not be true. His pet is Tony, a greater kudu, or an antelope if you want to be more general. A lot of his early life is unknown, but at 23 he lived in a butchery with an orc named Roland for half a year. While he's living there, he picks up playing the guitar. Somehow Rover and Roland get separated, and in their last moments, Roland makes Rover promise that he'd become a famous musician and have his face plastered on all of these screens seen around Clarux. So that's exactly what Rover goes and does. About a year into his new fame, he has the quote-unquote Birecotes incident where he gets super stupid drunk at a concert, and then he doesn't go back there. However, he ends up dating the NPC Fizz for about 2 years after they meet in Clarux, before they prematurely go on a 1-year-long break. During this break, Rover comes to the conclusion that he wants to still be in a relationship with Fizz, and he plans out a brand new return to Birecotes in order to go and see Fizz. Now let's get into a few important NPCs. The first few I'll be bringing up are the ones in our party. Definitely the most important of them is Josephina. She's a water genasi/changeling, and a rogue. Her pet, as well as her brother's pet, is Leech, this little black cat that they have. Josephina is completely unaware of the fact that she is a changeling. She believes that her powers to shapeshift are like a gift from some god. She's also homeless. She and her brother were completely abandoned by their parents. When their mother once returned to tell them their real names, Josephina chose to reject her given name and stuck with the chosen one. After Josephina is her brother, Fizz, or Fizhal. He's a water genasi/dragonborn and a ranger. He was formerly homeless along with Josephina, and when their mother came back to tell them their names, Fizz decided to take back his given name. He ends up going to Clarux and dates Rover, but, you know, they have their little break, so he returns back to Birecotes and discovers Colorand a week before Session 1 and gets rich and famous from it. He ends up being pressured to live in a mansion and seemingly doesn't manage his own money at all because it isn't being shared with Josephina, something that he is not aware of. Last on the list is Isla. She's a satyr and a druid. She is one of the few survivors of Roubalara being attacked, and she lives with her grandmother in an inn. Now, aside from Josephina, here is the most important NPC, in my opinion. That is Sprinkle. Sprinkle is a human. And there are 3 of her, actually. There's more than one Sprinkle. The first of these is what I call Deserted Sprinkle. She is only seen in the Intramurals, and is dirty and covered in sand all the time. She's quote-unquote the truest Sprinkle, and is a sort of representation of the past. The second Sprinkle is the one that we kind of see the most. This one I call Deliverer Sprinkle. mostly because she has a tendency to bring dolls. She really likes dolls, and she has heavy association with dolls. She is incredibly childish and is sort of the outlier among the three sprinkles. She is a representation of the present. Last is Devilish Sprinkle. She's evil? Question mark? Devilish Sprinkle was basically born yesterday. She has no understanding of really anything, especially what love actually is, hence an event that is going to happen in Session 3. Devilish Sprinkle is a representation of the future. Now, despite there being 3 sprinkles, none of them are the original. The original Sprinkle was like 12 years old and was actually friends with Josephina in like some sort of past life or whatever, up until a point where she started seeing doors and some nonsense, and I guess something happened? The Sprinkles don't remember what the other ones see or do. One Sprinkle could do something and then be overtaken by another, but the new Sprinkle won't have any memory of what the previous one had just did. With all that said and done, that is almost everything. I have one more thing I want to bring up. It's not really related to anything that actually happens in the campaign, but it's something important and a fun little quirk of what we do here that I think is important enough to bring up. DFW, if not already very obvious by the literal inclusion of Hatsune Miku, has a ton of ties to Project Sekai, or Hatsune Miku Colorful Stage, but who actually calls it that. Project Sekai is pretty known for these big important pieces of art, which are just called cards. And because of that, or really more so because of autism, DFW also gets cards like this. All of which are drawn by yours truly. We officially started this in Session 7, so you'll hear me bring it up again at that point. Each session gets 8 cards. 4 of these are what I refer to as the basic versions. These are representations of moments that happen in session, and will show up on screen as I'm talking about these moments. The other 4 are what I call the muralized versions. These are really just sort of done for fun, and are meant to be metaphorical for the themes of the session. They won't show up in the videos themselves, but the muralized card for the character who receives the most focus in a session becomes the thumbnail for the video. All of the art, including the muralized cards that I don't show, are on my Instagram, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to, like, shill or anything, or shamelessly plug. Lord knows I don't have the audience to be shamelessly plugging anything. That's just where it is, and if you want to see it, you can go take a look. And now that I'm done with that, that's really it. That's all I have to say for the pre-campaign. Thank you for listening. I hope that you'd be willing to stick around. DFW is like my main thing that I do around here, and it's such a big interest for me, and I love it so much. And we have a lot of fun stuff planned, so please, 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 please keep tuning in. Smile.